Welcome back to Gathering of Geeks, with me, Bear Wiseman, and today I have James Edward Raggi IV, also known as the creator of this wonderful TTRPG book, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and presumably its accolades. And that would generally lead me to believe that you're at least somewhat of a geek.
Yeah, I guess that's the word for it. It's I'm still it's still difficult to accept that as a thing because I grew up in the '80s where geek was. So I say, oh, I'm a geek. It's like, oh boy, the ass kickings are coming.
First things first, I think you're in a unique position to kind of confirm this theory that I have that uh, metal and geekdom really go hand in hand. And I think it's maybe because of a lot of the outcasty nature of being like a young metalhead or a young gamer or something like that, that we tended to go to these fantasy places or this fantasy music even to help with whatever we were going through growing up. Was it loneliness? Was it bullying? This or that or whatever? So, do you have any thoughts on that?
um, hmm. Yeah, as most boring answer ever. It depends. It's surprising where you find gamers
Hmm.
in metal and who's not. And you'd think anyone that's doing swords and dragons, but then no. Surprising, a lot of them are like, no, I don't do that. And then I was, I knew in the '90s even that like the Norwegian black metal guys, church burners, grave desecrators, that was a gaming scene as well. and,
Yeah.
and a few years ago, I get this book about Swedish underground metal, and they had the story that the Norwegians would come over and like play role playing games with the black metal guys there. And I was like, that makes so much sense. It's okay, yeah. but but you wouldn't think so because well, I got into metal in the early '90s through the death metal scene. And so there wasn't a lot of swords and dragons stuff going on in the lyrics. There was stuff, in the '70s and '80s that I'd missed. So I'm getting in with Cannibal Corpse and Entombed, and it's a completely different vibe.
Hmm.
That stuff didn't come across as geeky.
Hmm.
It was only geeky in so much as you had to be like apart from what you're supposed to do or what you're supposed to be interested in to even know these kind of bands.
Hmm.
So on that level, yes, but all of the trappings, like I wasn't, I loved horror movies, but I wasn't plugged into a horror community. I wasn't reading the magazines. I wasn't. So of course, there's a lot of that kind of interest in there. If you're interested, oh, how do they do the special effects? What's the technical stuff? No, 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 no. But I was just engaging with the work.
Hmm.
So I'm just engaging with the album. I'm just engaging with like a horror movie. I don't know anything about the people or what's going on underneath. And it's like now with shows. Like I go to the shows. I really don't talk to people unless I already know them. I mean, the only reason I'm here is because we have a friend in common that I already know because she also did a zine, and that's how I got to know her
Hmm.
25 years ago. So yeah, so it's that geek thing where you can be at home and obsess about a thing that the rest of the world does not care about. And in that sense, yes, but the image of the hard rocker, which to me is still the platonic metalhead,
Hmm.
the one that just drinks till blackout, and puking all over the pavement, and I don't I don't know how compatible that is with geekiness because
Mm,
I've always kind of stayed away from people who drank,
mm.
so I wasn't around those kind of people. But of course, even the people that I hang around with for my other interests, I don't know what they do at night. Maybe they do go home and get blackout drunk. But there's a separation in my head of those things. But
Mm.
yeah, so it's surprising who in metal is into that kind of stuff. But the image, because it's the party image, which is like the opposite of geek, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, and then you get like a band like Ailstorm who seems to combine both. Like those guys for
That's
sure
it's
drink.
like, well, that's like pure geek, and how metal is
That's
it?
honestly fair. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Like, but then you have the flip side, which is like the sadly late Alexi Laiho
Mm,
was, lots of drugs, lots of alcohol, and apparently, like, I've never noticed this personally, but lots of people say, yeah, like, go listen to, like, Follow the Reaper. All of those old guitar riffs feel really video gamey, because
mm,
apparently he
yeah.
did play a lot of games back in the
Mm,
day. So, but it was not something I ever really noticed. And much like you, like before I moved to Finland, anyways, I
mm,
was thinking, like, yeah, metal and geekdom have nothing in common
mm,
except for those bands like, Blind Guardian, who are really geeky. And I come to Finland and I find out that, like, every band is really geeky, or at very least, they're gamers, if nothing
yeah.
else. And it was kind of a surprise at first, but I started to think, huh, like maybe these communities do actually have more in common than I realized.
Well, just think of early days of death. I gotta keep not touching my nose on camera. But like the early, well, the Morbid Angel albums in the early '90s. Trey would in his thanks list thank Robotech and Sailor Moon and all that stuff. So
That's funny because I didn't listen to a lot of death metal back in the days. Like I came into metal with like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, so less of the death and more of the power, I suppose. And it was exactly that geeky stuff. It was The Flight of Icarus by Iron
mm,
Maiden, and I was really into fantasy, which made me really into Greek mythology. So when I heard this song at one of those exact points in life where, you're like, man, pop music all sounds
mm,
the same and I don't relate to it, and you know, I was a geek. I wasn't dating or in love when I was a teenager, so I didn't relate to any of that music after a while. It was these, like, pop music to me was unrealistic fantasies. I would rather listen to a song about the flight of Icarus.
yeah,
And suddenly it was this whole new world.
yeah. I think for me, metal. When I was starting to dip my toe into metal, it was around Terminator 2, actually,
Hmm.
when that came out because they had the MTV. Guns N' Roses did the video, and that's not exactly metal. But then Metallica, the Black Album comes out like right after that, and that's how I sort of slid in. I had always liked music, but just selections of what's on the radio
Hmm.
or MTV. I mean, the first two albums when I was a kid that I had mom buy for me were Michael Jackson's Thriller because I liked the video for Thriller, and Weird Al Yankovic in 3D, which had the song Nature Trail to Hell about horror movies.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I think getting into metal, it was a Terminator 2 tie in, but then Metallica's a lot harder. And then it's Pantera. And then it was after graduating high school, right around that time. So June, July 1992. For some reason, I decided, hey, I like this stuff. Like I was familiar with the hard rock stuff because I'd like Quiet Riot and Twisted Sister when they were big mainstream things. And it was after I graduated high school, I was like, okay, I should make a decision or I should find out what music I really like. Because I'm just listening to whatever, and I like some stuff, don't like other stuff, but there's no system to it. I don't know where to look for things that I like, so I should figure out what I like. And my way of doing this was MTV because they were pretty much all music videos at that point. but they would have themed shows. They would have Headbangers Ball. They would have, was it 120 Minutes was the alternative show, Yo MTV Raps. So you could say, okay, I'm going to watch this program, this format of video. Do I like this? Do I like this? And so one night, watching Headbangers Ball, and they had that section, the Triple Thrash Threat, where they get the really hard stuff. And what was it? Megadeth, Slayer, and Napalm Death. And when Napalm Death hit, it was like, oh, whoa, that's it, that's it, that.
Oh yes.
That changed everything. Because like listening to Guns N' Roses and Metallica, there's no big deal. That stuff's everywhere. Even Quiet Riot and Twisted Sister, that stuff was everywhere. But like, it's like the Napalm Death, and it's like, oh. And I was at my grandmother's house that weekend. So I remember the next day, it's like, can we go to a record store? Can we go to a record store? And I'm just trying to think. It's like sounds really immature for someone that just graduated high school, but it's like, yeah, I was kind of like that, wasn't I? Can you buy me some albums, Grandma? Like I'm a 10-year-old. And she did. She bought me in the record store. They had what was it, Megadeth's Peace Sells, because I think it was the video for Peace Sells. Slayer Season in the Abyss, which had the sketchy thing with all the upside down crosses, and Napalm Death's Utopia Banished were all in the first story we looked at. and and then so my grandmother's looking at this stuff like, what is this, Jimmy? and we go to pay for it, and she's just like really nervous. I don't know about this. And I said, oh, I'm sure if I kill myself after listening to this, they'll refund the albums. And the clerk was like, what? Yeah, that's from the start when it's like, oh, okay, this is the thing I like. And then, Napalm Death quickly leads to Carcass and Cathedral, because those were ex-Napalm Death members. And then realizing, oh, wait a minute, this little logo, this label thing, that matters. It's not just a company's just releasing music. It's like there are companies that'll be specialized, because all these tapes I'm getting, they have, oh, okay. And then you look at these thanks lists, and you realize, oh, those are other bands. I had no concept. I didn't know there was like magazines for any of this stuff. I'd like so I'm very geeky, cross coordinating the thanks lists of the things. It's like, oh, okay, the all three of these are thanking Deicide. I should go see if there's a Deicide album. And I had no idea about retail distribution or underground bands. So some stuff I could find in stores, some stuff I couldn't. And that's how I built my collection. I'd have a list of things. Okay, I've got 10 tapes now, and this band is like thanked in 8 of them. So that's the highest priority. And you go, and then once you realize the label thing, and then you find out, oh, Roadrunner also does this music, and this label also does this music. And then you get the compilations, the Grind Crusher. That was the big one early on. That is like, oh, all these, okay. And what do they sound like? It's not just buying a tape blind. And At Death's Door 2 from Roadrunner, or Relapse Records, Corporate Death, where they made up the CD to make it look like they were like a big time major record label that owned their own office building and record manufacturing plant. It's a wonderful little hoax of a booklet to present like mortician demos and anal cunt.
Incredible.
Yeah. And so that and the first concert I ever went to was a big stadium show, September 1992. Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Faith No More opening.
Damn.
What was it, like 40, 50,000 people in the Citrus Bowl, I think it was, in Orlando. And then I went off to Atlanta to go to school, and like I saw Megadeth there very soon after. And then but those again, mainstream, major label, mainstream stuff. The first actual real metal gig I went to was uh, Cannibal Corpse, Epidemic, and Unleashed at the Masquerade, February 1993. And I was reading, I was just looking through Creative Loafing, the free weekly alternative newspaper thing, and the clubs would advertise the gigs. So, oh, Cannibal Corpse. Oh, they're on all these thanks lists. It was only $5. I mean, I'm in Atlanta, and there's a band from, I guess they were in Florida by then. Epidemic was from California. Unleashed is from Sweden, and they're $5. What the hell? So, yeah, and I was just all geek, no metal yet, all geek. It's like, you know, and people were warning me, oh, you're going to go to that part of town, to go to that club. Like, it was a pretty shitty part of town, as it turned out. But so I have no idea because I've never been to a club show before. I don't know what to expect, and I'm to this day I'm always showing up. I'm there before the doors open. I'm like right there, ready to go in first thing. And so here's this club, and it's like I'd never been in a place like this before. I'm 18 years old at this point, and just like oh new. And so I just like get up in this, you know, against the stage. I'm gonna wait, and the place absolutely fills up. Then here comes Epidemic. I'd never heard of them, and they start playing. And it's like oh cool, cool, ah. And then Unleashed comes on, and then they were doing the gimmick. Or the singer gets a horn, fills it with beer, and pours it on the front row, and um, that was the most contact I've ever had with beer on the top of my head. I'm like, wow. And then Cannibal Corpse comes on. I'd not heard them at all. I'd only seen the name, so I wasn't familiar with them or their songs or anything else. You know, I was so new, still so new to the underground metal thing. I was just people watching, looking at all the shirts with all this obscure. It's like, oh my god, this is a whole alien planet. Cannibal Corpse starts, and then the Pit starts. And then in the early '90s, the Pits were nasty. I'm up against the stage, and I'm just getting pummeled because like the people not in the pit are 4 or 5 people deep, and they're just being shoved into me, shoved into me. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And there's Chris Barnes up there, and I'm like, oh, this is so weird and cool. And then he introduces a song. I don't remember if he'd introduced any other songs up to that point, but this one stuck in my head. I'm there, stage right. You know, these things looking up at him. Yeah, this next one is called Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's Cunt. And something clicks. It's like, you can do that? You can do that! And there's like two little musical things up to that point. Like hearing the Napalm Death, and it's like, oh, that's okay. That lights everything up. And then Chris Barnes saying that. And it's like, oh. that, I mean, this was a horror movie come to life. Because I'd been into horror since I was a little kid because my mother was into it, and she would show me all this stuff at an inappropriately young age. So I was just wired for it. And then even seeing the album cover for the album they were touring on, Tomb of the Mutilated, one zombie going down on another. And it's just like, oh, hello. And I got so into the whole death metal thing. It's like, that was the only real music. There's, you know, oh my God, like you're singing. Oh, yeah. And I
Classic genre snobbery.
yeah, oh God, yeah. It's like the faster the better, the more brutal the better. I don't want to hear a melody. I don't want to hear a sung note. I don't want to hear shit. I guess I should have asked before we started because I've completely blown it what your policy on language is on this podcast.
I don't care.
Yeah, I just want to say, oh yeah, I saw Chris Barnes and he says bleep bleep bleep. But and that didn't change until summer '94, I think it was. Well, it was the Cannibal Corpse Sinister Cynic tour, and Cynic opens up, and I remember gets the stage again, you know, and I was like, oh my god, do they have kids as roadies? These guys are so young looking. It's like, oh my god, it's the band. And they were more technical and progressive. And they had harsh vocals, but they also had the clean, like, electronic effect. I don't know if it's a vocoder, if that's, but it's like they had weird electronic clean vocals, and then the growls live were done by this woman who's playing the keyboard, and that was a first for me. It's like, oh, hello. And just the way they were playing, it's a cleaner style, and it was just like, and there were people behind me, turn the guitars off, you suck, and it was like, click, oh, death metal's for idiots, I like this new thing. um and then soon after that, I got into Amorphous, the Finnish connection. I saw Amorphous opening for Entombed, fall 1994. They were touring on their second album, and their second album has keyboards, first album doesn't. So their keyboard player, instead of figuring out something for him to do during the old songs, half the set he just goes off stage and waits. And it's like, okay, well,
no tambourine.
No tambourine. But from there, Cynic and Amorphous, and it's kind of, it's that trajectory. I think a lot of people got into music with death metal. Like the death metal scene was people who, death metal was the first music they liked. And it was during that time, it's like, oh, this band's doing something different. Okay, I'm interested in branching out more. There's more to music than death metal. But I didn't know this until later, because I assumed if you're on stage, if you're in a band, you're older, you know what you're doing. The fact that so many of these people were my age, and I had no idea. I'm looking at these older people who were doing stuff. But that was right around the same time, 1994 and 95, when everybody had been doing death metal for the past 5 years, also realized there was other music, and so all the bands got weird. Some of them got good. I think Amorphous got better with Tales of the Thousand Lakes and Elegy and things like that. But then you had bands that went to absolute shit. Like I don't like dance or electronic or techno or industrial, whatever. I don't like that entire section of music. And so many bands started experimenting with that. And it's just like, and so then I start growing into a bigger metal journey. But again, it wasn't until like 1995, I think, that I realized that people wrote about this stuff. That you can get information about any of this stuff. It's not stuff that magically appears in a record store. That there's things happening. Then you find out, then you get the newsstand magazine that covers this stuff, and then you have, oh, there are fanzines. People do it themselves. And I started getting into the U.S. zine scene, and I realized most of this stuff is just talking about death metal. Even into the late 90s, they're just wanting to talk about death metal. Blah, 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 corpses, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, there were some, oh, God. Oh, no, there was a zine done in the late 90s. It was Chris Dick and Mark Rutherford. And I forget what the name of their zine was, but they covered bands like Opeth and things like that. Grimoire of Exalted Deeds was a big influence, just because of the style and the comedy, and I took way too much from that when I started my zine. But basically, I saw these people just doing the stuff. There wasn't a publication, it wasn't a company, just people making their own magazines. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do it right. My definition of doing right, covering the right bands.
Of course.
Because, oh my God, it's like, yeah, all these bands suck. Why am I reading this shit? I'm going to do something good. And all of my ignorance and malignant parts of my personality were so present. Because it was just like, okay, I'm going to be the authority. I'm going to show people good music. At the time I started my zine, I had never listened to Iron Maiden or Dio or Judas Priest. And I'm starting the zine thinking, one of the first lines of the editorial is, I think you're stupid because you like bad. I mean,
Weirdly, a trait of both geeks and metalheads.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a funny story now, but oh boy, that was fun times.
And before internet backlash, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that first, was it the first or second issue got reviewed in Metal Maniacs, because it was like a strong voice. That's one thing I had: no brains, but some taste and a voice, a distinctive voice. And so once it started getting in Metal Maniacs and stuff, and I was getting attention, I'd get all sorts of mail, all sorts of all the internet was already a thing.
Mm.
Uh, no social media or anything like, but message boards existed in the '90s, and so I'm navigating now in a metal underground that I didn't know existed until I started a zine. And on one hand, how absolutely terrible, how stupid, what is wrong with me? On the other hand, the best way to learn something is to do it. And for all the people that just thought I was some stupid asshole, which I was, still am, there were people that were like, dude, you gotta learn this and this and this and this. I mean, I remember did an interview with Ian Perry of oh god, what band is he in? I don't even remember. But Ian Perry, and he was and he finds out during our conversation that I'd never listened to Dio. And bless him, he was just okay. Go get these albums. That's all he said. It's like, okay, dude, you need to know Dio. Get these albums. They're great. You need to know them. And like that stuff, I printed that in. I mean, I just transcribed everything that was in the zine for people to read. But people came forward to help. It's like, okay, dude, this section of music, you know nothing. Here's the foundations. Go get this and do that. And that was great, because how would I have ever learned that stuff? There was, I mean, there were message boards. It was like the Metal Maniacs message boards where people are me 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 me. There was no, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, help. You don't think to ask that. You think you know what you're doing because you've got this growing record collection. I've got dozens of CDs, dozens. Well, it was a bit more than that by the time I started the zine, but you think you know. You don't know the scope. You don't know what you don't know. You just have this stuff and you know that, and you know that what other people are talking about is good you don't like. So it's like, and so what a weird time, because it was just a money drain. I mean, it wasn't a job. It was something I was doing after I got off work and pouring all of my money in. And just to make these connections, and you talk to people and you meet people and you start getting on the guest list of shows and meeting the musicians, and then the big pivotal thing, and like I still had the attitude, and I would still do these horribly insulting negative reviews,
Mm.
like Grimoire of Exalted Deeds kind of inspired thing, which is horrible, because the one thing that doing the zine did, because once the promos started coming, that was great, because then I was exposed to a whole lot more than I ever would have been. But I thought I had a duty to review everything. And there were sometimes 20 CDs coming in the mail, unsolicited, for free. Labels and bands wanting to get their stuff reviewed. 20 CDs in one fucking day. And so I thought it was my duty to sit down and listen and have something to say about them, analyze it. I'll end up making a dick joke in the actual review, but I'd have to form my opinion before deciding the dick joke. And having to do that destroyed my sense of that's okay.
Mm.
I got angry at bands and albums for not doing something that inspired me to write about it.
Mm.
Instead of saying, oh, it's fine, but I got nothing to say, I'll ignore it. No, it's the sense of there wasn't stuff I hated, stuff I loved, and stuff that was okay. All of that okay stuff got flattened down into stuff I hated.
Yeah, yeah.
That really wasn't good. And one thing now, I buy way too many CDs now. Still, I don't physical media for me. And there's stuff I'll buy, and I'll go, oh well, that because when something's interesting to me, and the way I get my metal news these days is by looking at web store catalogs. What's the new arrivals? Oh, that band name and that cover, will have an atmosphere, and they'll always have a little thing: black metal, death metal. They'll just they won't try to tell you it's good or bad in most cases. Just tell you what it is because you just go to YouTube.
Mhm.
It's like I don't get all these these YouTube channels and stuff that I'm gonna review the new whatever, and like the next link is the full album stream from an official source.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, I can listen to you talk about the album for 15 minutes, or I can go listen to the album for 15 minutes and get But back then it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
So it was before the MP3s, and
The
I'm
good old days.
yeah. I'm learning and going through stuff and doing everything wrong, but also making contacts and learning a whole lot. And I decided to to attack Metal Maniacs because I thought they were covering stuff that was much too mainstream.
Hmm.
And the thing that broke me is they had a Machine Head cover feature where the headline is "We don't just want to be known as a metal band."
Mm.
It's like, why is that in the cover of Metal Maniacs? You should be advocating for the thing, your whole purpose. Someone says they don't want to be a metal band, fine. If you like the album, fine. Why are you putting them on the cover like this is the way? Like, no. So I wrote this long, angry letter and posted it on the message board. And it was Chris Maycock, Professor Black. He's like, they don't read the message board. Mail this to them. Okay, so I printed it out, mailed it. A little while later, I get an email from the assistant editor of Metal Maniacs, Jeff Wagner, to let me know they had a big fight in their office about my letter, and that the editor, Mike Greenblatt, Mike G, as he was known in print, was going to tear me a new asshole in print in a national newsstand publication. And I was like, oh. Well, it didn't escalate quickly, but it was just things are different now. And then it was it around that time I discovered more serious zines like Isten from Finland,
Hmm.
where it was a much more critical but still serious way of looking at it. That blew my mind because all I was used to was the professional newsstand magazine format, which is worthless because everything is all pre-formatted and it's got to fit and and then there were the fanzines. There would be ones where they'd have like wild voices and it's just going nuts, or it's just amateur shit that they can't write.
Mm.
And one thing that I can do, even when I'm completely ignorant, I think I can write. You have something. So seeing something made by people who were serious about it and knowledgeable and critical, that was like, wow. So that was excellent. The Yeah, I remember when that Metal Maniacs came out, and it was like a page and a half, all about me and how much of an idiot I am. It was like, wow.
Got a response.
Yeah, there was also I remember that it wasn't exactly that time. I forget when in the timeline I got a death threat. Someone someone left a message on my answering machine that I better watch what I say or I'm going to get my fucking throat cut. And I'm just thinking, you know, what would have been useful if he told me what he was complaining about, because even if I wanted to obey, I don't know what upset him.
Yeah.
You dumb shit.
It's honestly a good point. If you want someone to clean up your behavior by giving them a death threat, you might tell them what they should fix about themselves.
Yes.
If you're going to be that kind of person, anyways.
Yeah. And, musicians would call me up, and, some of them angry. I remember one time it was, I don't remember the band, but it's like three of the guys looked like metalheads, and one of them looked like a big, beefy, hardcore guy. And I'd mention that because I would review everything. I would review the promotional copy and the promo photo, all part of the album review. And he calls me up because I put my phone number in the zine for some stupid reason. Like, I want people to call me. I was like, who. And he's wondering, what are you talking about? It's like, well, you look, like pictures to hardcore guys, the tank top muscle shirts and all tattoos and bald. The other guys have the long sleeve metal shirt, and you look like you're in a different band. You look like you're in the thing. Wasn't an insult. I mean, I'm not into hardcore music, but I thought I was making a factual observation. You look like this completely other thing. So that one turned out not hostile. But I remember the singer of Flotsam and Jetsam sent me an email saying that he's tired of stupid death metal guys reviewing his albums, and that if he ever sees me at a show, he's going to piss on my head. Good old Eric AK. It's like, okay.
Creative.
Yeah. So I had all those sorts of interactions, but I would make some connections with some of the musicians I talked to. I did a lot of interviews. The interviews I liked doing, I think I was pretty good at the interviews. Not all of them, but I didn't have a pre-format, so I would talk to someone for 3 hours, print the whole thing, take 9-10 pages, really small font. And the zine was Lamentations of the Flame Princess. It was called Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and the joke was that LOTFP stood for Lord of the Fine Print. Because I'm paying for this, there were some ads, but I'm paying for all of this out of pocket in the printing. And of course, if you shrink the font, you can fit a whole lot more in less pages. So yeah, the biggest issue we did, I think, was 80 pages on newsprint with 6-point font throughout. Now, a smart person would have thought, hey, I got enough for a whole bunch of issues for the next year. Nope. I'm going to put together 80 pages of 6-point print, and not the A5 or digest size I do now. These full letter size pages. And my editorial is about how everyone else is lazy and isn't doing enough. Look what I just fucking did. It's like, and I was serious. I mean, when I wrote these things, I would crack jokes, but I wasn't being ironic. I was serious. When I said, I think you're stupid because you like music I don't like. You're all lazy because you didn't do this insane, obsessive thing that no one in their right mind would do. I was serious. And then moved to Finland, and the zine was not such a priority, especially since I didn't have a job. So if you're publishing a magazine out of pocket and it's not making any money, it's gonna go by the wayside. My ex helped out for like an issue or maybe two, I forget. And then I was like, okay, that's done. And then I swear, eventually you'll get to ask a question, but I'm telling the story.
No, tell me everything, and I don't need to do a thing. This is great.
Yeah. So then it was a couple of years, no zine, and I wasn't doing much. And there was a time, when all the integration schooling had run out. I'd already gotten divorced in Vasa, moved to Helsinki. Oh my God, what do I do? How do I get a job? I got no idea how to get a job in this country. Oh my God, I'm not qualified to do anything.
I still have no idea how to get a job in this country.
Me neither. Me neither. Because what had I done in the States? I'd done call center work. I worked in a warehouse. for the school district. I mean, this was not skilled labor. I had no qualifications. Couldn't work a phone center in Finland, you know. So, uh, you know, as the integration schooling was coming to an end, and maybe this is a new audience, so I get to tell this story. When I moved to Finland, you know, my ex lived in Vasa. You know, moved here to get married, and she was a Swedish-speaking Finn who lived out in the boonies outside Vasa, small little village, 2,000-3,000 people, and they spoke like a dialect of Finnish Swedish. So, and there were a bunch of little dialects up there in coastal Finland for Swedish. The family, there were members of the family very proud to not speak any Finnish. And all I'm thinking is, I'm doomed. Oh my God. So when I start integration school later that year, it's like, okay, now it's time to learn languages. They put me in an integration school. It was a Swedish speaking school. It was a religious school where all of the people in the villages, you know, would send their teenagers to go to school, you know, in the city. Vasa, 50,000 people was the city, because I think I think it's 4 hours to get to another town that's as big as Vasa. So for 2 hours out, everyone thinks Vasa is a big city. I grew up outside New York. And what is this shit? And Vasa, I think, at least at the time, it was the most even proportion of Finnish and Swedish speakers in Finland. And there was this weird ass dynamic where if you were a Swedish speaker, you only wanted to go to stores where they would greet you in Swedish. If you're a Finnish speaker, you only want to go to the stores that'll greet you in Finnish. And when they talked to each other, they talked English.
Interesting.
And I'm like, what is this place? So anyway, this is a, you know, the integration school was just, I guess, it was an add-on to being a religious folk high school. Religious folk high school. And, oh God, they tried to teach us Finnish and Swedish at the same time.
Useful.
And the Finnish teacher was fully fluent in Finnish, but she was a native Swedish speaker. So the accent was not the native Finnish accent, the native Finnish speaker accent. And teaching us Swedish, they were teaching us like standard Finnish Swedish, which is not what I would be listening to at home or around the in laws. And all of the media came from Sweden, and the Swedish is pronounced differently, and they say things differently than Finnish Swedish.
Nightmare.
I have a really good excuse for not knowing shit about the native languages here. It's like, wow, how is that supposed to work? Who? Oh my God. Oh my God. Anyway, that didn't work out. I ended up in Helsinki, and the integration school, at least the Finnish speaker was a native Finnish speaker there, teaching us Finnish. So I can read. I can understand short sentences. You know, see spot run kind of thing. I can keep up. Because the problem is, if I get lost on a word and I'm trying to figure out the word and the person's on the next sentence, you know, oh God, I don't know what you're talking about. If you're doing like short caveman sentences, I can keep up. I know that much. And for reading, I can read just enough to know what you're talking about, but not what you're actually saying.
That honestly sounds pretty close to my Finnish level.
Yeah.
And I've been here 15 years, so
I've been here almost 20.
Yeah.
So,
It is a hard fucking language to learn. Like, unless you are one of those people who just like forgets you speak English and just starts speaking Finnish all the time, no matter how bad you are, no matter how many words you don't know, it's really hard to learn, especially in down in the South where most people do just speak English too.
yeah, because anytime if you're trying and you stumble, they switch to English.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, thank God. And so the integration schooling, you know, I went to a second school, and integration school, Helsinki, but that was coming to an end. I was like, oh no, oh no, I have to do something. I have to get a job. And at that point, would have been 2008. I hadn't had a regular job in 3 years. And it's like, okay, what am I doing? Because when I first came to Finland, I thought, oh, I'm going to work. I'm going to dig ditches, do whatever the hell ever. And no, they said, no, you should go to integration school.
Yeah.
The government says, like, okay.
Turns out you can't dig ditches in English, I guess. So
Yeah.
all of the people who dig ditches didn't actually learn English. So
Yeah, so I find out about this program where the Finnish government will pay you as a foreigner. I don't know if they have a native equivalent program. They'll pay you as a foreigner to start a business. Okay. Well, I thought I'll start a role playing company. Now, I'm especially in 2008, 2009, the old school Renaissance section of gaming was famously known by the cliche, a niche of a niche of a niche.
Mm.
The idea of I'm going to make a living in role playing games starting from nothing, no experience, no contact in the industry, is foolish and stupid and unrealistic as it is. But I'm going to do it with OSR stuff. It was nonsense. I fully thought I'm going to scam the government. They're going to pay me to do this like it's a real thing, and then I won't have to get a job for another 6 months. But it wasn't a fraud in that I actually made some books.
Mm.
I did the thing I said I was going to do. I just think fraudulent in the fact that this will never work. This can't work. These fools. And then people liked it. People liked the stuff. And it was like, oh, well, I'll do some more. Oh, they like the stuff. Oh, okay. Well, let's try to do in like that was July 2009 that I started. And I had so little expectations for the books. Like I had released like a zine type role playing thing in 2008. That was what was it, like Multiprint was the name of it. One of those copy shops. I just had it done at a copy shop, a booklet. But the next year when I was trying to go professional, how I was doing the books is that when when an order would come in, I would print it out on my home laserjet, no, inkjet printer at the time. Print out in the inkjet printer. We would fold it. You know, my second ex-wife would help with this. Would fold it, use like a fabric cutter and fabric blade to trim the edge, because when you fold it, the pages, so we trimmed it, folded it, and had a long arm stapler that everything, by hand. That's how little expectation I had that anyone was going to want this stuff. and a couple of interesting things happened. People wanted the stuff. That zine type amateur thing I'd done the year before, I'd sent it out to everyone that was doing old school publications at the time. And Goodman Games signed me up. Hey, we want to release this professionally. And they read, okay. And my stuff, gathered momentum. So by the time summer 2010 comes around, I'm no longer getting money from the government program. Yeah, that was 6 months and then a 3-month extension. But now I'm like on my own. And my ex was happy to. I was the rock star living on the couch until I made it big. And oh boy. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take full advantage of this then. And I decided to do a box set. Because one thing I had done was I was just doing adventures. And the big three in old school gaming at the time was Osric, Swords and Wizardry, and Labyrinth Lord. Those were all clones of early editions of Dungeons and Dragons. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to make adventures for these things. The rules are right there. The whole cloning old things using the open game license was still controversial. Oh, you're going to get sued. Well, I'm going to do an adventure. This is all original material. But you couldn't get any industry support or retail distribution or things like that if you're doing adventures for game systems that aren't in the retail system.
Mm.
And if you approach stores on your own, it's like adventures for games they're not carrying. That's not going to work. So, okay, I'll make a game. So I went nuts and made this boxed set. It was insane. What was it? I don't even remember. The deluxe set was like 7 booklets, character sheets, a pencil, dice, just plus the box. Folded cardboard printed shipping box. But I went to a professional artist. It was what was it, $900 for the cover art? Was that one? Might have been $750. Might have been another one. Just went all in, just borrowing money from people. I put this together, and boom, that thing started selling. And it was expensive. And I was like, oh my god! It was that moment when the box set started selling, the game started selling, that I didn't even want to do. It was just basically another D&D clone.
Mm.
And it starts selling, and it's like, oh my god, I might be able to do this for real. Holy shit! And so I just stopped everything, and when I realized, okay, I'm going to make a real professional go at it because now there's a track record, people might be interested. I made a few moves. I gathered up a couple other people to publish. And the second edition of the box, because the first 500, the 500 copies I printed of that first one sold out pretty quick. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do a second edition of this box, but I'm going to do things differently. And it's not just going to be another D&D clone. I'm going to go full on horror. I'm going to call it the Grindhouse edition. And it's going to be based on, it's going to have the aesthetics of of death metal and nasty 70s underground horror cinema, cannibal holocaust kind of stuff. There's nudity and blood and just because if I'm going to do this professionally for real, it's got to be something I really believe in and want to do. I'm not going to make just another D&D in a growing sea of D&D clones. What is the point? And the first people I signed, Jeffrey McKinney, who had done his own fan supplement, Carcosa, which was very controversial. It was a science fiction setting that had like Cthulhu horror and just the most what's the word, degenerate graphic black magic.
Mm.
Where it's like, okay, to cast this spell, you've got to get an 11-year-old girl, and you've got to. And it's like, I mean, when he had published that independently, there were people saying someone needs to call the cops on you. It was the first great divide in the OSR scene of whether or not Carcosa was even okay to exist. So I was like, I'll publish a fancy hardcover version of it. And then the other guy I signed, like on a record label. Well, that's how I think of it. I think of it as a record label. Was Zach Smith, the guy that worked in porn, that did an online. I think it might have been the first or one of the first before Critical Role and all that. He had a show called "I Hit It with My Axe," where he was playing D&D with the porn star friends. So some pretty decently big names. I mean, Sasha Grey was in his game, and the fact that he had a blog, because in those days it was the blogs. That's where the blogs and some of the old message boards, social media hadn't really spread to there. Google Plus is where it migrated to later on. It was like the one group of people who liked Google Plus was the tabletop gamers, but he had the blog playing D&D with porn stars, and that also created a lot of, oh my god, do we acknowledge this person exists? What if people associate porn with what we're doing? We'll be dirty because like a lot of the satanic panic mentality and wanting to avoid all that negative attention, it was still everywhere in the hobby, and like the old school D&D people, I mean, those of us into the old school scene lived through that time. We didn't want it again, but part of my thing with going Grindhouse is, okay, I'm going to take up the fight that TSR, the publishers of D&D in the 80s, that they abandoned. that they surrendered. You know, the Mad Mothers editorial about how they're going to sanitize D&D so people's moms won't be mad. There was an actual, and so you know, it's the guy that did the thing that people were calling child porn, and the porn star, and those are the people whose stuff I was going to publish. And so it was April 2011 when the Grindhouse box and Zach Smith's Vornheim City kit. No sexual content. He was doing game stuff, and it was off to the races. They both sold like hotcakes, I say. And suddenly, I was a legit professional publisher, not being propped up by the government, not being propped up by my wife. I'm like, oh shit, I'm doing it. And then 2013, I decided, what was it, 2013, I got retail distribution and participated in Free RPG Day. And for Free RPG Day, what they tell you is just make like a 16-page thing with a mini adventure, quick start rules, something, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, that's not how you advertise. No, that's not how you advertise a game. And actually, it was this one. It wasn't hardcover at the time, but for Free RPG Day 2013, I did a, 90-page campaign adventure that was full of blood and nudity and all this stuff to go to be the advertisement for the game. And it blew people away. It did. That's not being conceited. It blew people away, but also caused controversy because my style is I guess always will be against what you're supposed to do in RPGs. They're supposed to be for everyone. You're not supposed to upset anyone, and then this person's guts are on the floor. It and it caused controversy because it was explicit. There were lots of reports, like it's 300 game stores participating in Free RPG Day. I think I'd sent, what was it, 5 per store, something. I don't remember the exact amount, but a lot of the stores were just throwing them out. Nope, nobody can have these. Going to throw them out. There's one story, somebody went behind the game store to rescue copies out of the dumpster. Or when people go into the store to ask for it. You know, the one story, I don't know how representative these things are. I get the anecdotes, of course. It's like, you don't want that. That one's about killing children. It's like, it's not about killing children. There's a child murderer in one of the side quests. It's not about that. Holy shit. So for the next year, I made the Doom Cave of the Crystal-Headed Children, which is, all about killing children. Is that what you're going to say we're all about? Okay, motherfucker.
I love that.
Yeah. And then the next big thing, late 2014, Zach Smith's Red and Pleasant Land comes out. Alice in Wonderland meets vampires, Dracula versus Countess Bathory kind of thing. Ooh. In an Alice in Wonderland context.
Nice.
And the following summer, there's the ENnie Awards. It's the biggest fan award in role playing. It's dead air. It's the award ceremony is held at Gen Con. It's the big thing. I mean, the industry awards are the Origins Award, at the Origins convention, but the fan award, the one the people vote on, is at Gen Con. And Red and Pleasant Land wins a bunch of awards. We beat out, what was it, we beat out the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Player's Handbook in one of the categories. I think it was writing.
Incredible.
Fan vote!
That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, and it's... And so we become big. I remember when Red and Pleasant Land, when it had come out the end of 2014, we had over 1,000 pre-orders, or 1,000 orders upon release. And I released a few other books with that, and people were buying the stuff. And before I paid any of the bills, any of the printing bills, any of the shipping bills, with just the money coming in, it's like, This is more money than I've ever heard of anyone having at one time. I could disappear with this money, which I didn't. Maybe I should have.
It's no fun.
So it's like life was is like we were legit, but we were also not proper because Zach is a combative individual online, and
Great with modern internet, I'm sure.
oh god, yeah, well in the summer of 2014, somebody already had an article because he was also a consultant on D&D 5th edition because they were wanting to take from the community.
Mm.
So controversial people like Zach or the RPG pundit were included as consultants in 5th edition. And when it was revealed that Zach had consulted on that, there were all like actual hit pieces were being written about him, and like popular, like I don't know, mainstream, but but more well-known general cultural commentators were taking shots, and we were the enemy. We were the enemy of the proper people.
Enemy
And
of Wizards of the Coast.
well, Wizards of no, well, Mike Merles and stuff. He's the one that brought Zach on.
Mm.
And he had said nice things about me early on, saying, "Oh, this is some cool underground stuff happening in D&D." But then the battle lines got drawn. If you're with these people, then you're not with us, and it was, and that stuff started happening. The stuff where the hit pieces were being written about Zach. Really, it happened concurrently with Gamergate, which I stepped away from. I was like, okay, I got my own shit to deal with. And nobody will like me saying this, least of all Zach, but I don't think it's a coincidence that stuff started happening on my home front at the same time the Gamergate stuff is happening with the video game people. It I mean, Zach hated the Gamergate people and everything they stood for. And a lot of that shit is obnoxious. That it was not the right way to fight that fight. But on the other hand, let us be free to, let us be free to play the games we want and have the games we want. We don't need your interference to tell us how to do it properly or what we should like. I have every sympathy with that. And that shit's flaring up again, that shit's flaring up again. And it's like, what side are you on? Well, I'm on the side where you can do what the fuck you want. This is fiction. And if you're going to say no, you have to sand that edge down, then no, I am against you. And that will put me side by side with a bunch of chuds. But, you know, what are you going to do? I'm more worried about the argument and wanting people to do what they want rather than worrying about who agrees with me.
Yeah.
But we're not quite there yet. So things go well for several years. And I remember, 2017 and 2018, I was making like a lower middle class income off of role playing games. And I ended 2018, beginning of 2019, okay, let's expand this into a proper business. Let's bring on a couple of people on as full timers. Let me get a business loan so I can reprint these out of print books. Those don't sell as quickly because there's already been a printing. So we'll do a loan and everything will be fine. So just after I do all that, like right after the loan was cleared, the money is in my account. Zach's ex that Zach's ex accuses him of abuse during the relationship. And this is my best-selling author. This is and and it seemed to be the consensus was quickly, we got him. We got him. This is it. And and this again, I know how I think is very different than how most people think. I don't get on board with the new causes. I'm very contrarian. I'm very seeing different sides of different things. So, like when people say, "Oh, that's a bad person," well, yeah, but they have a couple. But no, they don't. Well,
Mm.
it's like, so when that happened, my business dropped by 30%, like immediately, and I handled it very badly from a business point of view, very badly from any angle. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have done it worse. No, I was working with someone that was doing my social media because I was already off of social media because, oh god,
Lucky.
yeah. So I was talking with them, and they were like, "Well, what are we going to do?" And I was like, well, let's just not say anything right now. This is like a domestic thing. This has got nothing to do with role playing books.
Mm.
She tweets that as the official response. And it's like, oh god.
It's like, hey, we're trying to mind our own business over here and let you guys deal with your domestic dispute on your own.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh god, okay, people hate me, and so it's like, look, I'm not making any statement. I got to talk to a lawyer.
Mm.
So I talked to a lawyer, and basically I wasn't even the main character in this drama, and the pressure and the anger and the hate was so much that I had to drop him from the roster. I could not handle it. There was no forget the right and wrong of it. I could not handle it. I was scared to death because I'd made all this investment, I have all these loans, and now I'm fucked.
Mm.
And the hope was at least the yelling would go away.
Mm.
That I could just at least not deal with that. Um, but I even handled the announcement badly because everyone was wanting strict condemnation. That this is the worst person in the world. This person should be flushed down the toilet. But this person was largely responsible for the life I'd been able to lead the previous 5 years. I mean, this was the guy that won me the awards. This was the guy that, pushed the thing. So whatever else happened, whatever this guy is or isn't, I didn't know. I didn't even know they were broken up for like a year and a half after the fact. That's how close I was to their relationship. I don't know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on in that house. I've had issues with crazy exes wanting to, make all my friends hate me by saying shit. So I was like, I know that people are assholes. You can't really tell by, they'll do the stuff behind closed doors. You don't know how they are. But I know that, people will say shit to get back at people too. So it's just, and I'm hopelessly biased in the situation since my
Yeah.
fortunes are so tied to this guy. So I made the announcement that we're canceling all outstanding projects. We're not going to destroy any of the books that are out now. I'm not going to destroy books, And I thanked him for the work we had done the previous at that point 7 years.
Mm.
That I was I was toast in a community sense and being able to be recognized as a member of the community. Immediate toast. You thanked him? Yeah, yeah. He's a brilliant author, and
Mm.
and when it comes to things like that, like I would still watch Chris Benoit matches in
Mm.
pro wrestling terms. The guy murdered his wife and son, and I'm still able to watch his matches. All the stuff with the Norwegians, with church burning, murders.
Mm.
I like dissection. I luckily, thankfully, don't like Burzum much, so that saves me some hassle. But Emperor has a murderer, in the
Mm.
Night Side Eclipse, and that is a
Yeah.
fantastic album.
I hear Gaul is like the nicest dude in the world.
Yeah, yeah. So that's how I approach artists and their art and everything. And now
Mm.
it's at my door, and I can't even drop the guy and stop working with him, but because I didn't word it and I didn't hate him and I
Mm.
didn't want him thrown in the sewer, I'm still the evil person, and that's been the last 5 years of my life. That really has, because I've lost all sorts of I mean, I've lost my retail distribution. As I said, the business was cut down. I mean, I've lost so much stuff, and people, immediately getting the email saying I can't work with you anymore from all this bunch of people. So my pool of talent dries up, and the things I would do to, try to have self-respect, not necessarily
Mm.
good publicity, but have self-respect because of what I see. This is difficult because you know and like I don't know you that well, so I don't know what you're thinking. It's like you thanked him, I don't know, and so it's like I don't know if I'm talking to an open audience or
Mm.
what your audience is. If this is just going to be a new round of you had a real fucking idiot on your show today. I don't know, so I'm just now nervous talking about this stuff. But if I'm gonna give my fucking biography, I got to give the whole biography, not
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, it's difficult. I try to fight back certain things. That summer for Gen Con, I wrote a book called Zach Has Nothing to Do with This Book. And the plot of the book, it was about a jester getting in trouble and is going to be murdered. It was like a Hateful Eight kind of situation
Mm.
where all these people are wanting to kill this jester because of a book that they think is his, but it isn't even his. And there were some things like hairstyle or tattoos and stuff that were like Zach related, but it, the jester was an author self-insert that I'm getting all this shit because of someone else's book.
Mhm.
But people thought, but in all fairness, I also had an editorial in the back to where I explained fully what I thought of the Zach situation, and I put it in print in the book to so if you're buying the book, you're at least open to lamentation stuff. You're not automatically an enemy.
Mm.
I made a lot of enemies because it was basically my point of just making the point of the author versus the author versus the work and to me it's about what harm will this cause if Zach was everything that people said he was. It's like, is anyone going to be hurt more if he's sitting at home writing a book?
Mm.
Is that going to be a thing? It's like who is harmed? But all these people that have enjoyed his work and the people that are still willing to enjoy his work, if you create good art, and I know good is going to be, it doesn't have a standard definition. Everyone has their own standards. But if you're creating art that some portion of the population is good thinks is good, and you're prevented from making it, you are hurting. You're depriving the world of like talent of
Mm.
art, and and you think of how many artists through the ages were fucking terrible people, just fucking awful, that have enriched the world. They may have been terrors to the people in their
Mm.
lives, but they have enriched the world. And imagine if these people just weren't allowed to do their stuff.
Mm.
And yeah, the whole situation sucks, but why would you insist on less creation out there?
Mm.
That you're going to want what this so what are you wanting this guy to do? No charges were filed. This wasn't a police matter. They've been in litigation for 5 years with each other now, trying to get at, Zach wants to prove his innocence and she's wanting to prove that stuff happened to her. And it's like, okay, that I know Zach, but again, no idea what happened in their relationship. And I've decided whatever the court rules, I'm just going to accept because what other information do I have to work with?
Mm.
Um, but the point is, I once tried to commission artwork from Bobby Beausoleil. He's one of the people in prison. He's one of the Manson family murderers. Not the
Mm.
Sharon Tate thing, a different incident, but I've tried to hire him before, and all this stuff. So I don't have the moral aversion that like, if even if I wasn't arguing Zach's innocence.
Mm.
I'm just arguing why would you want to shut off the art? And that's been rough because I picked the worst of all worlds. It's like
Mm.
I submitted to the wishes of well, the mob
Give in
is.
to the pressure,
I
and then
give
it's
in
still
to
not good enough.
well, I gave into the pressure of I got to get rid of him, but I made it very clear that it was forced, that I hadn't wanted to do it.
Mm.
So there was no ease of the pressure
Mm.
of any of this. And so for 5 years it's been going through my head. What if I just told people to fuck off and just publish his next book?
Mm.
Would I be in a worse place now? Or if I had just decided, no, I'm gonna save my business and save my mental health and save everything, because it that ruined me, like,
Mm.
physically and mentally. I mean, I was on all sorts of brain deadening drugs for stretches of time, and I'm getting my weight down now, but I was getting up to near 400 pounds, and it was
All over someone else's
this
controversy.
is the slim me, you know. Uh, what if I had just gone all in on denouncing him and just
Mm.
saying, we're on the right side of history, we are, and so, spend your money with us with confidence. But I'm just convinced, with everything that came after, and stuff from 2020, I was never going to stay on the good graces of people that insist that you have to think and be and do that way. So
Mm.
there was going to be some other thing that I was going to trip up the popular conception or the popular opinion, and I'd be in the same place. So it's yeah. So that in a nutshell, to make a long story short, that's my story of publishing, and I'm still going. End of this month, I guess it's going to be early next month. We're at the end of the month now. I'm putting the biggest project we've ever done to press, and really hoping. We haven't had a hit book since this whole thing started. And it's okay. This is just got to keep trying. Just keep going, because this is what I do. The love of this kind of it's weird calling it fiction, because role playing isn't stories.
Mm.
When you're publishing role playing stuff, it's like situation. You're setting up a situation and a location, and then the story is what happens when the players go through it and you find out what's going on. But all this fictional imagination stuff is like, I'm not great with the real world, as the story I just told. I crash right into the real world. It's a car wreck. But being able to just work in imagination and fiction, where you shouldn't have the filters, and all I've seen in the years, especially since doing the Grindhouse edition in 2011, I'm just trying to imagine in a certain flavor, and I just feel all the I know all the doors that get slammed in your face. I know all the people that are saying this is bad and you're bad for liking it, let alone doing it, and all the limitations on you can't imagine that way. And that sucks, because then that affects how I create, because everything I make, it's like, oh, is this bad? Is this going to be trouble? Is this,
Mm.
oh, is this, and am I doing, am I, am I creating things that's going to be like a pushback against that? Am I kicking back at this thing, at these forces? And that too is a corruption of what I should be doing. I shouldn't have to worry about the rest of the world when crafting. This is the thing I want to make. This is the thing I hope will be, accepted into the world by some, hopefully enough people. That's all it needs to be. I
Mm.
don't need to be popular. I don't need to be well loved. I just need enough
Mm.
to be able to keep going.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, that's honestly like a really interesting story, because you don't get to hear like the personal side of the companies of someone who's been canceled a lot of the time, and just how fucked up that is, because it's one place where I've personally been really conflicted, and Lost Profits is a good example. I loved Lost Profits when I was in the 2000s or something. And then word on the street is now that dude was like molesting children or something like that. And so 100% absolute condemnation for that guy. That's a horrible thing to do. Absolutely no question there. But can I not listen to his music anymore because of that? And the thing is that if I had met him and he was rude to me, there would be no question. I would just be like, fuck this dude,
Yeah.
because it's personal. And it, like, I'm hugely empathetic. And of course, the idea of someone like doing horrible things to children is deeply upsetting. But this question of like, but does this mean I can't listen to his music? Even just like I feel that like I shouldn't listen to it. It feels kind of wrong, but also it's good music. So I've never found that like sweet spot where I feel like I have made the good moral decision about how to react to these things. And ultimately, I don't think I care as
Mm.
much as some people, just like in the sense that people take it so personally.
Yeah.
Like you're a bad person and you've done something bad and that means you have to die now or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Like honestly, isn't objectively death kind of the easy out? Life is hard.
Yeah, well, it's this sense that, if you want to be some sort of creative artist, you must be, it's like old amusement park rides. You must be
Mm,
this tall morally to have this profession.
mm.
And it's like, okay, well, what do you want them to do? It's like they're not entitled to have the career they want. It's like, okay, what do you want them to do? I mean, the answer. I mean, how it felt to me when the pressure was on me. It seemed very clear these people just wanted me to die.
Mm.
That disappearing would be good enough for now, but if they ran into me later, they'd still be, it's like, you can't do this. So if this person had a job at a McDonald's and you walked into the McDonald's, you'd be fine with them, cooking the fries. No, you'd still freak out at them. That's not good enough. There was a controversy, 2020, 2021, early on. Some activist group found out that a guy that plays out with a lot of white power bands in Finland, his band was like anti-Muslim. He worked at a record store. He's a record store clerk, and they made a big enough fuss that he had to leave his job. And on one hand, it's like, okay, did he have awful views? It's like he was a record store clerk.
Mm.
And on one hand, I understand you want society to work, and people who hate other people make society not work. On the other hand, being not able to do the most low status jobs because of your opinions doesn't seem like that's a working society either.
That's the same way people can't get jobs after being in prison. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like our society isn't set for looking after each other, which
Mm.
is kind of what it should do on the baseline. And I remember there was a situation some years back, I want to say maybe around 2017, when there was this controversy over these guys who landed that thing on the meteor somewhere. So
Oh,
they
the yeah.
and the shirt and the comment he made, the sure, yeah, it was a sexist comment, like no denying that, but did the guy, like, all these calls for him to like lose his job, and
Mm.
really, like, even as a woman, I'm a woman, and I felt like he just said something dumb,
Mm.
and people online were like, this is men wearing shirts like that and talking like that are the reason that women don't work in science enough. And I was like, please, like, if first of all, I've been dealing with men talking like that my whole life.
Mm.
If I let the way people talk and a shirt stop me from following my dreams, frankly, I'd put that on me.
Mm.
Like, if we as women are that fragile that we can't handle a man wearing a booby Hawaiian shirt,
Yeah.
like, come on. Like, I like to think that my gender has a little more backbone than that, you know? So
It's well that yeah, let's get into it. Well, like online feminism.
a controversial subject.
When I grew up, feminism, everything I heard about feminism, everything that was communicated to me about feminism was that women were strong. Women can do the thing. Women,
Mm,
you don't pretend women can't do things.
mm.
They are equal people. They're they are strong, for lack of a better term. But somewhere along the way, feminism turned into, oh, it's so awful for us. Oh, we can't do things. Oh, we're being kept from. It's like that's feminism. Wait, what? What happened? Wait, what do you mean? What's stopping you? Are you? It's sort of like how the Me Too movement. It's like, okay, we can take down Harvey Weinstein. That's good. That's good. Sounds like a right fuck that needed to be put away. But then you have people trying to trash people for a bad date,
Yeah.
or it's you have this spectrum of there's this bad thing that you need to fix,
Mm,
and so everyone's going to try to pile their shit on to increase the span of things, which is the bad shit that no one can tolerate, and it's like, and, and you keep expanding that sphere of bad shit that no one's supposed to tolerate till you get to a point where people just thinks the whole thing is bullshit, even that core stuff that does need to be addressed.
mm. But that is the problem with the way society seems to work. It's like you have a movement, and the movement is good, and then you have these people who are overcorrecting. And I remember this incident in university in Tampere that some girl in one of my classes was trying to accuse Disney of whitewashing. And I was like, no, 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 no. You can accuse Disney of a lot of stuff, body image problems, princess culture. Like, there's tons of shit that Disney has done that's not cool over the years. Whitewashing is fully not one of them. Princess Jasmine, Esmeralda, Mulan, Tatiana, like all of these people, like Disney set things in the culture where it was set. So the reason Elsa and Anna are in Frozen are white is because it's an old Danish story.
That yeah, that's the thing. It's like feminism in general is good. I think some applications of feminism are counterproductive. I think uh, I don't think that like everything you ever make, whether music or movies or games or anything, needs to needs to display and promote the feminist values. It's
Mm.
like that that's what I think of feminism as a concept and how it applies to creative work.
Um, ultimately, I
I'm
think
crazy, apparently.
we should all just be fucking nice to each other. And it would make everyone's lives so much easier, but we don't do that. We're salty, bitter, nasty little people who don't belong on the internet. Like, when you're feeling salty and bitter and nasty, stay the fuck away from the internet. You're just making the world a worse
Mm.
place. So, yeah. So
Yeah, well,
it's so strange.
it's also weird. Like as someone that makes stuff, when you get the flyby negative comment,
Hmm.
that sometimes you could tell they're trying to actually be a critique, but it's just like,
Yeah, you didn't have to say it like
yeah,
that.
what am I supposed to do with that information? The book's already out, and the next book, we're this thing is like maybe it's usually the most actionable critiques that are actually meant to improve things are sent privately. They're never
Mm,
left as a comment.
yeah.
Yeah, it's existence on the internet. Because I think of like when I was growing up and playing role playing games, I had no sense of who anybody who had anything to do with making role playing games. I had no sense of any of them as people.
Mm,
It's like they were a line on the byline. Maybe like for Dragon Magazine, someone writes an editorial, so it's like personality and opinion coming through.
mm,
But otherwise, it's just interchangeable people I don't know. I don't know anything
yeah.
about their lives. Nothing, nothing.
Mm,
And how much better must it have been
mm,
when people could just be the creator and they are just their books,
mm,
and the entire fan base doesn't have an opinion of them as people. they'll have an opinion on you as a creator, but not an opinion of you as a person. Like, you know, I mean, like in 1986, I can imagine. I can imagine role playing designers, pretty odd bunch. You know, somebody was going to have an odd opinion about the Challenger blowing up.
Hmm.
But you don't know who. You don't know who had the weirdo theory. You didn't have to care. But all us idiots put our stupid opinions out there so other people can decide we're not human beings if we have that opinion. I don't think it's such a problem that someone has an ignorant opinion
Hmm.
because we're all ignorant about most of the things in the world. We don't
Mm-hmm.
really know. We might think we have at least a general handle, but we got no idea what we're talking about. And we still have opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to say that. People are going to say their opinions, especially if it's brought up. If they're asked, they're going to have the reflex opinion, whether or not they've got deep knowledge or whether they read two headlines on the internet, you know? And it's like, that's not so much the problem because apparently that's what people do. So to say that everyone should stop being what people are
Silly.
doesn't seem useful. People are going to do that. So what I suggest is that people stop being the way people are and stop giving it any weight. It's cliche that like I'm the guy that hates all the popular things, but I don't think I've connected with the popular things since the '80s when I was a kid, and then I realized there's stuff that's not popular, and oh, this is neat.
It's better even maybe
Yeah, it's
sometimes.
like sometimes I'll catch on to popular movies.
Mm.
Like for the stretch up till Endgame, it was like I was all in on Marvel,
Mm.
on the Marvel movies, and that was like the biggest thing in entertainment. And it's like I was right there with it. And it's like, I'm like, how did this happen? This feels weird. I'm liking things normal people like, but then I remember when liking all that stuff when I was a kid means you were a geek. You know, you read comic books. It was just a continuation of someone took this seriously and made real things out of it. Holy shit! It's validated my childhood. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
sitting here on camera talking to each other and trying to figure out what the fuck people are doing online
yeah.
with their presence. The being out of the loop and not being plugged in and getting all of my music news just from web stores, and so I'm only looking at the music and I'm not listening to the rumors because every time I go looking for things, like oh, I want to see if anyone's reviewed this album, just see what people. I found this album unusual. I want to see what other people think of it,
Hmm.
and so you end up somewhere where people are talking about all the same shit that everyone talks about. Did you hear what this guitarist of this band said? And it's like okay, close the window. Why? What does that yeah, it's the gossip, the way people talk about each other. Back when I was being antisocial was so much easier before the internet.
Like,
Everybody is the crazy person on the bus
yeah.
that's just saying shit to everyone. And then you realize, yeah, and I'm a crazy person on the bus too, just saying shit to everyone. And I can't figure out, am I trying to influence the world to be more like I am? Am I just letting off steam? Am I yeah, I humanity just seems so stupid. It's everything we all seem to do seems to be counterproductive, except the people who are really concentrating on doing something, and those people are fucking annoying. It's like leave me alone. If I'm gonna get all excited and all in on something, it's gonna be on my thing, not your thing. Go away.
But holy shit, we've been at this for a while. Should we? I'll ask you, is there anything else of interest that you want to pitch or shout out or anything, or shall we wrap this up?
I'll wrap this up. Oh God, I get to forget about my life for a while by talking about my life for a while. No, no. Lamentations, the Flame Princess. Probably late April, early May. We will have new stuff out. True relation to the disaster of Virginia, 1633, the biggest project we've ever done. 3-book set. Lair of the Brain Eaters. What's the other one? Oh, now I'm brain farting on my own shit. Oh, Heart of the Saint and Don't Fuck the Priest.
Don't fuck the priest. Incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming by and telling me all these interesting stories, and good luck with the release.
Thank you.